The summons arrived at the worst possible moment. Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck of the human embassy ship, watching the distant glow of the Valeth homeworld through reinforced glass. 3 years he had served as cultural liaison to the Valeth Empire. 3 years of careful diplomacy, and never once had he been called to the palace at midnight. The holographic message flickered before him, displaying the royal seal and a single line of text in the flowing script of the Valeth language. The Queen requests your immediate presence. Come alone. His hands trembled as he dismissed the message. The Valeth did nothing without purpose. Every gesture carried layers of meaning, every word a calculated choice. A midnight summons meant secrecy. The word requests instead of commands suggested vulnerability. And alone eliminated witnesses. He changed into formal attire, the dark blue uniform that marked him as humanity's representative. His fingers fumbled with the ceremonial sash, the silver threading catching the dim light. Outside his quarters, the ship hummed with the quiet efficiency of night cycle operations. He passed no one in the corridors. Perhaps that was intentional. Perhaps they had all been ordered away. The shuttle ride to the palace took 17 minutes. Marcus counted each one, his mind racing through every interaction he'd had with Queen Thessera over the past months. She had always been cordial, distant, speaking through her chancellor as protocol demanded. They had never been alone together. The Valeth valued hierarchy above all else, and a queen did not lower herself to private conversation with an alien diplomat. Unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. The palace rose from the capital city like a crystalline mountain, its spires reaching into the purple-tinged sky. Landing protocols bypassed entirely, his shuttle was guided directly to a private platform Marcus had never seen before. No guards waited. No attendants, just an open doorway and darkness beyond. He stepped onto the platform, and the shuttle departed immediately, its engines fading into the night. The silence that followed felt deliberate, oppressive. Marcus walked toward the doorway, his footsteps echoing against polished stone. The air smelled of night-blooming flowers, sweet and cloying, the kind the Valeth cultivated in morning gardens. Inside, a single illumination strip guided him through corridors he didn't recognize. The palace was a maze by design, each path requiring authorization and escort. That he walked unaccompanied violated every security protocol. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was either extraordinary trust or a very elegant trap. The corridor ended at a door carved from dark wood, patterns of stars and moons etched into its surface. It opened before he could knock. Queen Thessera stood alone in a small chamber, so unlike the vast throne room where she conducted official business. She wore simple robes, deep blue like Earth's oceans, and her silver hair hung loose around her shoulders instead of bound in the elaborate style of royalty. Her 4 eyes, arranged vertically in pairs, fixed on him with an intensity that made him freeze in the doorway. "Close the door," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus obeyed, his diplomatic training warring with every instinct that screamed this was wrong. Queens did not stand. Queens did not whisper. Queens did not remove their formal regalia in the presence of outsiders. "Your Majesty," he began, but she raised one slender hand, silencing him. "There is no time for formality, Marcus Chen." She moved to a window overlooking the city, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "In 3 days my daughter will make a decision that will destroy everything we have built between our peoples. I have tried every method our laws allow to stop her. I have failed. Now I must break protocol, break tradition, and ask for help from someone who should never be burdened with our internal matters." Marcus felt the weight of her words settle over him like a physical thing. The Queen's daughter, Princess Vela, was the military commander of the Valeth fleet. Brilliant, ambitious, and openly skeptical of the alliance with humanity. He had met her twice, both times leaving with the distinct impression she would prefer to test human defenses rather than negotiate trade agreements. "What decision?" he asked quietly. Thessera turned from the window, and in the dim light he saw something he had never witnessed in a Valeth royal. "Fear. War," she said. "My daughter will propose war with your people. And she has the votes to make it happen." The room seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the back of the nearby chair, his mind racing through implications. The Valeth military outnumbered human forces 3-1. Their weapons technology exceeded anything humanity had developed. A war would be devastating, possibly extinction level for the younger species. "Why tell me?" Marcus managed. "Why not go through official channels? Because official channels are how she will win." Thessera moved closer, her expression urgent. "Vela has been building support among the military council for months. She has framed this as a preventive measure, citing human expansion into contested territories. She has evidence, carefully gathered and meticulously presented. To the Council, it will look like justified action. They do not know what I know. Which is? The evidence is manufactured. The territories in question were deliberately provoked. My daughter has orchestrated this entire conflict. The Queen's voice cracked, the first show of raw emotion. She wants war not for defense, but for glory. For legacy. She believes conquering humanity will cement her place in history. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. A setup. Humanity had walked into a trap months in the making, and no one had seen it coming. Even if I tell my superiors, even if we prove the evidence is false, the Council will have voted by then, he said, working through the problem aloud. We'd be scrambling to defend against military action while trying to present proof of conspiracy. It would look like desperation. Yes. So what do you want from me? Thessera met his gaze, all four eyes unwavering. I want you to speak to my daughter. Tonight. Before the vote. I'm the enemy she's trying to justify attacking. She will listen, the Queen said softly, because you will offer her something she wants more than war. Marcus waited, his pulse thundering in his ears. The truth about her father. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. The late king consort had died 7 years ago under circumstances that were never fully explained. Official reports called it an accident during a diplomatic mission. Rumors suggested everything from assassination to suicide. The topic was forbidden in polite society, never discussed, never questioned. I don't understand, Marcus said carefully. My daughter believes her father died because of human interference. She believes your people assassinated him to weaken the throne. That belief is the foundation of her hatred, the core of her justification for war. Thessera's hands clenched into fists. It is also a lie. I have let her believe it because the truth was worse. But if war comes, the truth becomes the lesser evil. What happened to him? He took his own life. The Queen's voice was hollow now, stripped of pretense. He could not bear the weight of the crown, the demands of our position. He left a message, but I destroyed it. I could not let history remember him as weak. I could not let my daughter grow up knowing her father chose death over her. So I stayed silent, and I let her hate humanity instead of hating herself or me. Marcus absorbed this, understanding the impossible choice Thessera had made. In Valeth culture, suicide was the ultimate dishonor, a stain that would follow bloodlines for generations. The Queen had sacrificed the truth to protect her daughter's future. Now that same daughter threatened to destroy everything because of the lie. If I tell her, she'll demand proof, Marcus said. I have it. Thessera produced a small data crystal from her robes. His final message, encrypted with codes only he and Vela knew. He taught them to her as a child, a game between father and daughter. When she decrypts this, she will know it came from him. She will know I am telling the truth. Marcus took the crystal, its weight trivial but its implications massive. This could break her. War will break millions. I am choosing the smaller tragedy. Where is she now? In her private quarters in the military wing. I have arranged for you to pass unchallenged. Thessera moved to the door, opening it to reveal a guard waiting outside, one Marcus recognized. Captain Zetis, the Queen's personal security, a warrior whose loyalty was legendary. Zethis will guide you. He knows nothing of what we have discussed. When you are finished, he will ensure you return safely to your ship. Marcus looked at the crystal in his hand, then at the Queen. If this fails, if she refuses to believe, you've just handed your political enemy ammunition against you. If this fails, we will be at war by week's end, and political positions will be irrelevant. Thessera's expression softened slightly. You asked once why I supported the alliance with humanity. I never answered. The truth is, I saw in your people something we lost long ago, the ability to change, to adapt, to choose hope over tradition when tradition becomes a cage. My daughter has not learned this yet. Perhaps she never will. But I must try. Marcus nodded slowly, tucking the crystal into his inner pocket. If I may ask, Your Majesty, why me? You have advisors, confidants. Why trust a human with this? Because you are the only one she might listen to, Thessera said simply. You have no stake in Valeth politics. You gain nothing from lying to her. And because 3 months ago you stopped a Valeth child from running into traffic during the trade summit. You acted without thinking, risking diplomatic incident to save a life that meant nothing to your mission. My daughter saw it. She never mentioned it, but I know she remembered. For one moment, you were not the enemy. You were someone who valued life over protocol. He barely remembered the incident. A child had darted from their guardian during the crowded summit, and Marcus had reacted on instinct. He had returned the child, apologized for the breach of etiquette, and thought nothing more of it. I don't know if that's enough, he said. Neither do I. But it is all we have. Captain Zethis led him through corridors that grew progressively more austere, transitioning from the ornate beauty of the royal wing to the functional efficiency of military quarters. They passed guards who stiffened at attention but asked no questions, their training overriding their obvious confusion at seeing a human walking these restricted halls. Marcus kept his expression neutral, his pace steady, though his mind churned with what he would say when he faced Princess Vela. The captain stopped before a door marked with military insignia. He pressed a communication panel. Princess the Queen has sent an advisor with urgent information. A pause, then a voice, sharp with suspicion. It is after midnight. This can wait until morning. Respectfully, Princess, it cannot. Another pause, longer this time. The door slid open. Princess Vela stood in the doorway, still in her military uniform, her silver hair pulled back severely. She looked from the captain to Marcus, her 4 eyes narrowing. You, she said, the word carrying weight. Why would my mother send you to me at this hour? Because what I have to say cannot be said through official channels, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady despite the princess's obvious hostility, and because it concerns your father. Something flickered across her face too quick to identify. She stepped back, gesturing curtly for him to enter. Captain, wait outside. If I call you, respond immediately. Yes, Princess. The door closed behind Marcus, leaving him alone with the woman who wanted to destroy his species. The quarters were spare but comfortable, walls lined with tactical displays and military commendations. A desk covered in data pads dominated one corner, evidence of long hours spent planning for war. Speak quickly, Vela said, positioning herself near her desk, within reach of what Marcus suspected was a weapon. You have 1 minute to explain why you are here before I have you arrested for espionage. Marcus pulled out the data crystal, holding it where she could see. Your mother gave me this. It contains your father's final message, encrypted with codes only you can decipher. Before you make your proposal to the military council, she wanted you to have the truth about his death. Vela's expression froze. My father was killed by human operatives attempting to sabotage the Alliance. This is documented fact. It is documented supposition, Marcus corrected gently. There was never proof of human involvement, just circumstantial evidence and assumptions. Human ships were in the sector. Human operatives were on the station where he died. Human ships are in many sectors. Operatives attend many conferences. Correlation is not causation, Princess. She moved with sudden violence, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. You dare lecture me about my own father's murder? Marcus held his ground. I dare tell you that your mother believes you are about to start a war based on a false premise. She believes you deserve the truth before you make a decision that will cost millions of lives. If you think I'm lying, decrypt the message. The codes are ones your father taught you. No one else knows them. Vela snatched the crystal from his hand, her expression twisted with anger and something else. Grief, maybe, or fear of what she might find. She moved to her desk, inserted the crystal into a reader, and began entering commands. Her fingers flew across the interface, inputting sequence after sequence. Marcus watched her shoulders tense as the encryption began to break down layer by layer. The room's lighting dimmed as a holographic projection materialized above the desk. The image was grainy, recorded years ago on personal equipment. It showed the late king consort, his features drawn with exhaustion, his eyes hollow. He sat in what looked like a private chamber, speaking directly to the recording device. Vela, my starlight, the image said, and the princess made a sound like she'd been struck. If you are seeing this, then I am gone, and your mother has finally decided you need to know the truth. I am sorry, my daughter. I am so sorry. Marcus backed toward the door, giving Vela space as her father's image continued speaking. The words were in formal Velith, but the emotion transcended language. The king consort explained his struggle with the demands of his position, the weight of expectations he could not meet, the growing darkness in his mind that he could not escape. He spoke of loving his daughter, of being proud of her strength, of hoping she would become the leader he never could be. He spoke of his decision, made with clear mind and heavy heart, to end his suffering on his own terms. He spoke of writing this message in the codes he had taught Vela during her childhood, their private language, so she would know beyond doubt that these were his true words. He begged her not to blame her mother for keeping the secret. He begged her not to let his weakness define her future. "You are stronger than I ever was," the recording said, the king consort's voice breaking. "Strong enough to carry the truth. Strong enough to lead with wisdom instead of anger. Strong enough to make the hard choices I could not know. I love you, Vela. I am sorry I am not strong enough to stay and watch you become the leader you were meant to be, but I have faith that you will be greater than your grief. Greater than your loss. Greater than me." The recording ended. Vela stood motionless, staring at the space where her father's image had been. Tears tracked down her face, silent and devastating. She made no move to wipe them away. Marcus remained by the door, waiting. This moment did not belong to him. He was a witness to private grief, an intruder in sacred pain. But the queen had been right to send him. No Valeth could have delivered this message. They would have tried to comfort, to soften the blow, to protect the princess from the full weight of truth. But Vela needed no protection. She needed honesty, raw and unfiltered. "Get out," Vela whispered, her voice wrecked. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. "Princess, I know this changes nothing I can say to make your pain less. But your father was wrong about one thing. His choice was not weakness. It was the act of someone who suffered beyond what they could bear. There is no shame in that. The shame would be in letting his pain create more suffering, in letting grief become hatred, in letting loss become the justification for destruction." I said, "Get out." He reached for the door control, then stopped again. 3 months ago, during the trade summit, a child ran into traffic. I stopped them without thinking, because protecting the vulnerable is what we do, Valeth and human alike. Your father's message asks you to lead with wisdom instead of anger. I think he would want you to remember that we are not so different, your people and mine. We both value life. We both protect those who cannot protect themselves. We both make mistakes and hope to be judged by our intentions as much as our actions. "Human," Vela said, her voice dangerous now. "If you do not leave in the next 3 seconds, I will kill you with my bare hands." Marcus left. Captain Zetis waited outside, his expression carefully neutral. If he had heard anything from within the room, he gave no sign. They walked in silence back through the military wing, through the ornate corridors of the palace to the private landing platform where a shuttle waited. "Did you deliver your message?" the captain asked as Marcus boarded. "I delivered it. Whether it was received remains to be seen." The shuttle lifted off, and Marcus watched the palace recede into the distance. He had done what the queen asked. He had given Vela the truth. Whether that truth would stop a war or merely delay it, he could not know. The military council would meet in 3 days. Princess Vela would make her proposal, and humanity would learn its fate. Marcus returned to the embassy ship and filed no report. What could he say? That he had conducted unauthorized diplomacy at the request of the queen? That he had violated protocol and security regulations? That he had gambled the future of human-Valeth relations on the grief of a princess? His superiors would demand explanations he could not give without betraying Thesara's confidence. So he waited. He returned to his quarters, tried and failed to sleep, and watched the hours crawl toward dawn. Somewhere in the palace, a princess wrestled with truth. Somewhere in the royal wing, a queen waited to learn if her gamble would save or doom them all. Marcus stood at his window as the first light of the Valeth sun touched the palace spires. In 3 days he would have his answer. In 3 days, humanity would either take its first step toward lasting peace or its last step toward extinction. He thought of the king consort's final words, spoken to a daughter across the barrier of years and death. "You are stronger than I ever was." Marcus hoped that was true. He hoped Vela's strength would manifest as wisdom rather than vengeance, as courage to choose peace over the easy comfort of hatred. He hoped, but hope felt fragile in the face of what was coming. 3 days. The queen had given him a mission. He had completed it. Now all he could do was wait and pray that truth was powerful enough to overcome grief, and that one princess's choice would determine the future of billions. The sun rose higher, painting the city in shades of gold and copper. Marcus dressed for the day, prepared his schedule, and went through the motions of his duties. But his mind remained in that stark military quarter, watching grief transform a warrior princess, wondering if he had just witnessed the moment that saved 2 species, or the quiet before catastrophe. 2 days passed in agonizing slowness. The embassy ship maintained its routine. Human personnel went about their tasks, unaware of the threat looming over them. Marcus attended meetings, reviewed trade proposals, and smiled through diplomatic receptions while his stomach churned with dread.
No word came from the palace.
No midnight summons. No message from the Queen. On the morning of the third day, Marcus woke before dawn and went to the observation deck. Today the military council would convene. Today Princess Vela would make her proposal. Today they would learn if war was coming. He pressed his hand against the reinforced glass, feeling its coolness against his palm. Earth was hundreds of light years away, impossibly distant, yet somehow close enough that he could imagine his family waking up, going about their lives unaware that their continued existence might hang on a single vote in an alien council chamber. At 1400 hours, Marcus received a priority communication. Queen Thessera wished to speak with him immediately. Not a midnight summons this time, but an official request, properly filed through diplomatic channels. He made his way to the palace, this time accompanied by embassy guards, following proper protocol. No secret corridors, no hidden platforms. He was escorted to a formal receiving chamber where the Queen sat on a throne scaled for private audiences. She looked older than she had 3 nights ago, the weight of her gamble visible in the set of her shoulders. Captain Zethus stood at attention beside her, and 2 other guards flanked a doorway. When Marcus entered and performed the traditional bow, the Sara gestured for privacy. The guards retreated, though Zethus hesitated before obeying. "Marcus Chen," the Queen said formally, "I asked you here to inform you that the military council convened this morning." Princess Vela presented her proposal regarding human expansion into contested territories. Marcus felt his heart stop. This was it, the moment of truth. "The proposal was rejected," Thessara continued, and something in Marcus's chest unlocked, air flooding back into his lungs. "My daughter withdrew her evidence, citing concerns about the validity of her intelligence sources. She recommended instead a joint investigative commission with human representatives to examine the territorial disputes through neutral diplomatic channels. The council voted unanimously in favor." "Your Majesty," Marcus managed, his voice unsteady. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," Thessera replied. "What happened between you and my daughter 3 nights ago will never be discussed officially. It did not happen. You were never here. I never asked for your help. The fact that war has been averted is simply fortunate timing." Marcus understood. The Queen had broken fundamental protocols, violated sacred traditions, and risked her political standing on a desperate gamble. If word spread that she had involved a human in internal Valeth affairs, especially matters of royal family tragedy, the consequences would be severe. They would both deny everything, maintain the fiction, and let history record only the official version. "I understand, Your Majesty." "However," Thessara said, her voice softening slightly, "there is something else. My daughter has requested a private meeting with you. Not tonight, and not in secret. Tomorrow, in neutral territory, with proper diplomatic oversight. She has a proposal regarding the Joint Commission, and she has specifically asked that you serve as the human representative." That surprised him. "Did she say why?" "She said that you are the only human who has proven capable of telling her the truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable." The Queen's expression remained formal, but something in her eyes suggested satisfaction. She also said, and I quote, "He does not condescend to grief, and he does not weaponize pain. That makes him either the worst diplomat I have ever met, or possibly the only one worth speaking to." I am not certain which interpretation she intended as a compliment. Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips despite himself, knowing the princess probably both. "Probably," Thessara agreed. She rose from her throne, stepping down to stand at Marcus's level, an informality that would never be allowed in a public setting. "You saved countless lives 3 nights ago. You accepted a burden that should never have been yours to carry. I can never publicly acknowledge your service, but privately, I thank you. Not as a queen, but as a mother who has made terrible choices and been given an opportunity to see them made right." "Your Majesty, I simply delivered a message." "You delivered hope," she corrected. "In the darkest hour, to someone who had forgotten it existed, that is no small thing." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 people from different worlds, who had conspired to prevent catastrophe. Then Thessera resumed her formal posture, queen once more, and Marcus bowed as protocol demanded. "You will attend the meeting with my daughter tomorrow at 10 hours after dinner. The details will be transmitted through official channels. The Joint Commission will be announced next week." "And Marcus Chen," the Queen paused, "when you write your report to your superiors about these events, I trust you will exercise discretion regarding certain details. My report will be entirely factual, Your Majesty. It will note that I was honored to deliver diplomatic correspondence at your request, and that Princess Vela has graciously agreed to pursue peaceful resolution of territorial disputes. Everything else is merely speculation and rumor, unworthy of official record. You are learning our ways, Thesara said, with what might have been approval. Perhaps there is hope for your people yet. Marcus left the palace and returned to the embassy ship, where he immediately began composing his report. He chose his words carefully, describing events in a way that was truthful without revealing the private tragedy at the heart of the matter. He wrote of diplomatic breakthrough, of the Queen's wisdom in pursuing peaceful channels, of Princess Vela's decision to prioritize investigation over action. He wrote nothing of midnight summons, grieving daughters, or the weight of secrets that had almost destroyed two civilizations. When he finished, he sat back and stared at the document on his screen. Somewhere in the palace, a princess was coming to terms with truth. Somewhere in the royal wing, a queen could finally rest, knowing her daughter had chosen wisdom over vengeance. And somewhere beyond the stars, billions of humans would never know how close they had come to extinction, saved by a mother's desperate gamble and a father's final message of love. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the designated meeting location, a neutral conference facility in the capital city. Princess Vela was already there, standing by a window overlooking the city. She wore civilian robes instead of her military uniform, a subtle but significant choice. She turned when he entered, and he saw that the grief was still there, would perhaps always be there, but it had been integrated into something stronger. Not hidden or buried, but acknowledged and carried with dignity. Ambassador Chen, she said formally. Thank you for meeting with me. Princess? He replied with a slight bow. I am honored by your invitation. No guards, no attendants, just two people attempting to build something from the ruins of almost catastrophe. Vela produced a datapad and slid it across the table. This is my proposal for the Joint Investigative Commission, she said. I have outlined the disputed territories, the evidence that was used to justify military concerns, and the process by which I believe we should examine the validity of that evidence. I have also included a framework for establishing permanent diplomatic channels to prevent such misunderstandings in the future. Marcus reviewed the document, impressed by its thoroughness. This is more comprehensive than anything I expected, Princess. I spent 3 days writing it, she said quietly. 3 days examining every assumption I had made, every conclusion I had jumped to, every piece of evidence I had accepted without proper scrutiny. Do you know what I discovered? He looked up from the datapad. I discovered that I wanted war, Vela continued, her voice steady but raw. Not because it was necessary, but because I needed an enemy. I needed something to fight, something to blame, something to justify the anger I had been carrying since my father died, and so I found one. I manufactured one. I convinced myself that your people were the threat, that eliminating that threat was my duty, that honor demanded action. But you stopped yourself, Marcus said. You chose differently. I chose differently, because someone gave me the truth I had been running from. She met his gaze directly, all four eyes unwavering. My father's death was not your doing. It was not anyone's doing. It was simply tragedy, and tragedy has no enemy to fight, no target for vengeance. It simply is, and we must carry it. Marcus set down the datapad. I cannot imagine the weight of what you learned 3 nights ago, Princess, but I can say that your father was right about your strength. You proved it by choosing wisdom over the easier path of war. Wisdom, Vela repeated with a bitter smile. Is it wisdom to realize you have nearly destroyed millions of lives because you could not face your own grief? That feels more like cowardice finally overcome. It feels like being human, Marcus said, then caught himself. Sorry, poor phrasing. What I mean is, your father's message spoke of suffering beyond what he could bear. You were carrying suffering too, Princess. Grief for him, anger at his loss, and the weight of unanswered questions. You found an answer, even though it was painful. That took courage. She was quiet for a long moment. I have been taught all my life that strength means never showing weakness, never admitting doubt, never allowing emotion to influence duty. But my father's message spoke of his weakness, his doubt, his overwhelming emotion. And yet, his final act was to think of me, to protect me from the worst of the truth for as long as possible, to hope that I would be stronger than him. Was that weak or strong? Both, Marcus said simply. We are complex beings, Princess. We contain contradictions. We can be strong and weak, wise and foolish, brave and frightened, all at the same time. The challenge is not to eliminate the weakness, but to choose how we respond to it. Vela nodded slowly, processing this. Your species has an expression, I believe. To err is human. We have something similar. To falter is to learn the weight of standing. I think perhaps both sayings capture the same truth. We grow stronger not by avoiding failure, but by surviving it and choosing to rise again. And you have risen, Marcus observed. I am trying to, she corrected. This commission, this proposal, is my first step. But Marcus Chen, I want you to understand something. I still do not entirely trust your species. I still have concerns about human expansion, about the speed at which your people develop technology and claim territory. I am not suddenly convinced that our alliance is without risk. I would be worried if you were, Marcus replied honestly. Blind trust is as dangerous as blind hatred. What matters is that you are willing to examine the evidence fairly, to investigate concerns through proper channels, and to choose dialogue over destruction. That is all anyone can ask. Then we have an understanding? Vela picked up the datapad, making a few adjustments to the document. I am proposing that this commission include representatives from both our militaries, our diplomatic corps, and independent observers from neutral species. The investigation will be transparent, the findings published publicly. If evidence of human aggression exists, it will be found. If it does not, that absence will be documented. No more assumptions. No more convenient conclusions. The human government will agree to those terms, Marcus said with confidence. We have nothing to hide and everything to gain from transparency. They spent the next 3 hours working through details, negotiating timelines, and establishing protocols for the Commission's operation. It was tedious work, the unglamorous reality of diplomacy, but Marcus found it deeply satisfying. This is how peace was built, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through careful attention to procedure, mutual respect for process. As they concluded the meeting, Vela paused at the door. Ambassador Chen, may I ask you something personal? Of course, Princess. That child you saved during the trade summit. The one who ran into traffic. Do you remember what you said afterward when their guardian apologized for the incident? Marcus thought back, trying to recall. I said it was nothing. Just instinct. You said more than that, Vela corrected. You said children are worth any diplomatic incident. They are the future, and the future is worth protecting. I remembered those. When I was planning for war, those words haunted me, because I realized that war would destroy futures, human and Valeth alike. Children on both sides would pay for my need for vengeance. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. Princess, I am just glad that your wisdom prevailed. Not my wisdom, she said quietly. My father's. His final gift was to remind me that I am stronger than my pain, stronger than my grief, strong enough to choose the hard path. I will not waste that gift. She left, and Marcus remained standing in the empty conference room, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just transpired. A war averted, a future saved. Not through violence or threats, but through one mother's desperate gamble, one father's final message, and one daughter's choice to honor both. He transmitted the agreed-upon proposal to his superiors, who responded with cautious optimism. The human government approved participation in the Joint Commission. Announcements were made, diplomatic channels buzzed with activity, and slowly, carefully, the two species began the work of building trust on a foundation of truth rather than convenient fictions. Weeks passed. The commission convened, and Marcus served as the primary human representative, working alongside Princess Vela and a dozen other officials from both governments. The investigation was thorough, examining every territorial dispute, every piece of evidence, every claim of aggression. It was not easy work. There were genuine disagreements, real concerns that needed addressing, and moments where tensions threatened to boil over, but they persisted, and gradually patterns emerged. The evidence that had seemed so damning revealed itself as correlation without causation, coincidence without conspiracy. Human expansion into contested territories had been opportunistic rather than strategic, driven by civilian corporations seeking resources rather than military planners seeking advantage. Valeth military movements had been defensive responses to perceived threats rather than preparations for aggression. Both sides had been operating on incomplete information, each interpreting the other's actions through the lens of suspicion. The Commission's final report was published 6 months later. It concluded that while both species needed to improve communication and establish clearer boundaries, no evidence supported claims of deliberate aggression from either side. It recommended a series of reforms: joint monitoring stations in disputed territories, regular military exchanges to build mutual understanding, and expanded civilian cultural programs to break down stereotypes. Most importantly, it recommended the establishment of a permanent diplomatic council, co-chaired by representatives from both species, empowered to address disputes before they escalated. Princess Vela and Marcus Chen were named as the inaugural co-chairs, a decision that surprised no one who had watched them work together over the past months. At the formal ceremony establishing the council, Vela stood before assembled dignitaries from both species and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. She spoke of the dangers of assumptions, the courage required to confront uncomfortable truths, and the strength found in choosing peace over the comfort of hatred. She did not mention her father, did not reveal the personal tragedy that had nearly led to catastrophe, but those who knew heard echoes of his final message in her words. Marcus spoke next, emphasizing humanity's commitment to the alliance and to the principle that differences need not lead to conflict. He spoke of the child at the trade summit, of instinct to protect the vulnerable, and of the shared values that united their species despite surface differences. He spoke of hope, earned through hard work and mutual respect rather than naive optimism. When the ceremony concluded, Queen Thessera approached Marcus privately. They stood on the balcony overlooking the city, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. "You have done well," the Queen said simply. "Better than I could have hoped. Princess Vela deserves the credit, Your Majesty. She made the hard choice. I simply helped provide information. You provided more than information. You provided compassion without condescension, truth without cruelty, and hope when it was desperately needed." Thessara paused, choosing her words carefully. "My daughter and I have spoken about her father, truly spoken, for the first time since his death. It was difficult. We both wept. We both raged. We both grieved properly, finally, without the weight of secrecy between us. That conversation would never have happened without your intervention. I am glad the truth brought healing rather than more pain." "Truth always brings both," the Queen said. The question is whether we grow from the pain or let it consume us. My daughter chose growth. I hope that in the years to come, she will teach others to make the same choice." They stood in comfortable silence, two conspirators who had gambled everything and won. Finally, Thessara spoke again. "Marcus Chen, you will serve on this council for many years. You will work closely with my daughter, navigating complex problems and preventing conflicts before they begin. This will not be easy. She is stubborn, brilliant, and occasionally insufferable. She will challenge you constantly." Marcus smiled. "I would expect nothing less, Your Majesty, because our peoples need leaders who challenge each other, who refuse easy answers, who choose the difficult path of mutual understanding. You and Vela have proven capable of that. Do not let the bureaucracy dull that edge. I will do my best." Thessera turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. My husband, before his death, used to say that the measure of civilization was not in its weapons or wealth, but in how it treats those who suffer. He believed that showing compassion to the vulnerable was the highest form of strength. When you saved that child at the summit, you embodied that principle. I think he would have liked you, Ambassador Chen." She left Marcus alone on the balcony, her words settling over him like a benediction. He thought of the king consort's message, of a man who had struggled with unbearable weight and chosen to protect his daughter even in death. He thought of Vela, carrying grief that had nearly destroyed everything. He thought of Thessara, making impossible choices and bearing the consequences with dignity. He thought of all the lives that hung in the balance, human and Velith, connected now by threads of understanding carefully woven through crisis. The work was not finished. It would never be finished. Peace was not a destination but a continuous choice, made daily, sometimes moment by moment, to see the other not as enemy but as partner in shared survival. The sun set completely, and lights began to bloom across the city below. Marcus remained on the balcony watching two civilizations merge into twilight, separate but together, different but united in the understanding that they were stronger combined than divided. Somewhere in the palace, a princess prepared for the challenges ahead, armed with truth and tempered by grief. Somewhere in the royal wing, a queen rested easier, knowing her daughter had been saved from herself. And somewhere across the stars, humanity slept peacefully, unaware of how close they had come to extinction and how far they still had to go toward genuine peace. But Marcus knew. He carried that knowledge like a sacred trust, a reminder that civilization balanced always on a knife's edge between wisdom and destruction, and that sometimes the difference between catastrophe and salvation was a single choice made in the darkest hour by someone brave enough to face uncomfortable truth. The midnight summons had come. Fate had been near, But wisdom, compassion, and courage had prevailed. And in the delicate peace that followed, two species began learning that the future belonged to those willing to choose understanding over easy hatred, truth over comfortable lies, and hope over the seductive simplicity of war. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The diplomatic council would convene. He and Vela would begin the complex work of translating ideals into policy. There would be setbacks, disagreements, moments where the old suspicions threatened to resurface. But they would face those challenges together, human and Veilith, building something new from the ashes of what almost was. As he prepared for sleep, Marcus thought one final time of the king consort's message, of words spoken across death to a daughter who needed them desperately. "You are stronger than you know." That message had saved not just Vela, but billions who would never know they needed saving. It had turned grief into wisdom, pain into purpose, and loss into the foundation for lasting peace. Maybe that was the real lesson, Marcus thought as darkness claimed him. That our greatest strength came not from avoiding weakness, but from surviving it and choosing to build something better from the wreckage. That truth, however painful, was always preferable to comfortable lies, and that sometimes the future of civilizations hung not on weapons or armies, but on a single moment of human connection, of seeing another's pain and choosing compassion over judgment. The midnight summons had come, and Marcus Chen had answered, carrying truth into darkness and emerging with hope. Now, in the light of new dawn, he would help build the future that choice had made possible. One day at a time, one challenge at a time, one choice at a time, until the peace became strong enough to endure, and two species learned to walk forward together into whatever came next.